Welcome to African Tales Stories channel. Without wasting our time, let's get to the watch. The village of Lala was alive with celebration. The air smelled of roasted goat meat and spicy jollof rice, and the sound of drums rolled through the night like distant thunder. Laughter echoed from every corner, and children ran barefoot between the huts, their giggles ringing like tiny bells. It was a night of joy, a night of love. For tomorrow, Amina, the most beautiful maiden in the village, would become the wife of Omar, the son of the wealthy Max. Amina sat in the center of the gathering, dressed in a flowing red wrapper, her skin glowing in the firelight. Beads of coral framed her delicate face, and golden anklets jingled softly as she shifted uncomfortably on her wooden stool. Women danced around her, singing songs of blessing, but Amina barely heard them. She smiled when expected, nodded when spoken to, but deep inside, a strange feeling curled in her stomach. Something was wrong. She could feel it. A cold shiver slid down her spine despite the warmth of the night. Her heart pounded against her ribs, and for a brief moment, the laughter, the music, the voices, everything faded into silence. Then, just as quickly as it came, the strange moment passed. She shook her head, forcing a smile, but when she looked across the fire at Omar, her future husband, she noticed something odd. He wasn't watching her with excitement like a groom should. His eyes were downcast, his fingers drummed against his knee. He looked uneasy. A sudden gust of wind rustled the palm leaves overhead, making the flames of the torches flicker wildly. Somewhere in the distance, a lone owl hooted. Amina's grandmother, Mama Zara, who sat beside her, squeezed her hand. "You are quiet tonight, Amina," she whispered. "Is something troubling you?" Amina wanted to tell her everything, that the night felt too quiet, too hollow, that Omar's strange behavior unsettled her, that deep within her bones she felt the cold grip of danger. But how could she explain a fear she could not see? So she swallowed the words and forced a smile. "I am only tired, Mama." Mama Zara studied her for a long moment, her old eyes wise and knowing, but she simply nodded and patted Amina's hand. "Go and rest, my child. Tomorrow is a big day." Amina stood and excused herself from the crowd, weaving through the gathering, her feet silent against the cool earth. As she walked past the elders, she caught a glimpse of Max, Omar's father. His wide face gleamed with sweat as he laughed heartily, his heavy gold bracelets clinking together. But as Amina passed him, his laughter stopped abruptly. She turned slightly, just in time to see him watching her, not with the pride of a father-in-law, but with something else. Something dark. A cold fist gripped her heart. She hurried away, slipping through the shadows of the huts, past the sleeping goats and chickens, until she reached her family's small compound. Pushing aside the raffia curtain of her hut, she stepped inside, lit a small oil lamp, and sat on her mat. She exhaled deeply, rubbing her hands over her arms. The uneasy feeling had not left her. If anything, it had grown stronger. Then, from outside, she heard it, a soft rustling, like footsteps. Her breath caught in her throat. "Who's there?" she called. No answer. Slowly, she stood and moved toward the door. The oil lamp flickered, casting shadows that danced along the walls. Her heart pounded as she reached for the curtain. A hand suddenly grabbed her wrist. She gasped, nearly screaming, until she saw the face of the person who had grabbed her. It was Tina, the strange young girl whom the village called Ohumuo, the one who sees spirits. Her eyes were wide and wild, her breath heavy as if she had been running for her life. "Amina," she whispered urgently, squeezing her wrist so tight it hurt. "You must not sleep tonight. You must leave this village, now." Amina yanked her hand away. "What are you saying?" she asked, confused. "There is danger," Tina whispered. "I see it. I hear the spirits whispering. If you stay, you will not live to see the morning." Amina's blood turned to ice. She stared at Tina, unsure whether to believe her or laugh off her words as the nonsense of a troubled girl. But deep inside, something in her already knew the truth. Before she could respond, a loud sound shattered the night. A blood-curdling scream. Amina's body stiffened in terror. She knew that voice. It was her mother's. She bolted out of the hut, with Tina right behind her, and what they saw made the blood drain from their faces. The village square was in chaos. People were running, shouting, searching. The drums had stopped. The fire torches flickered in the cold wind. And in the very center of it all, Mama Zara stood wailing, her frail body trembling, pointing toward the path that led to the sacred river. "Amina is gone," she screamed. "My granddaughter is gone." The villagers gasped. Murmurs rippled through the crowd like a wave of dread. Then someone pointed toward the ground. "Look." There, at the entrance of the river path, lay Amina's wedding wrapper. It was soaked, but not with water, with blood. A cold silence fell over the village. Then, in the hushed night, a voice rose. An old, shaking voice. It was the oldest elder of the village. His wrinkled hands clutched to his staff as he whispered, "The river goddess has taken her." And just like that, the village believed. Only one person didn't, Tina. She turned, looking into the darkness, feeling the presence of something far more sinister than a vengeful river goddess. Amina wasn't taken. She was stolen, and whoever had taken her was still here watching. The wind howled through the trees of Lala, carrying with it the scent of damp earth and something else, something old, something forgotten. The villagers said the night carried voices, whispers from the past that begged to be heard. Tina knew this was no superstition. She had heard the whispers herself. They had called her back. She pulled her tattered cloak around her shoulders as she walked through the narrow village paths. Eyes followed her from behind thatched windows. Fear, suspicion, guilt. That was all she saw in their faces. To them, she was still the cursed child who had dared to question the elders all those years ago. The one who had spoken of a truth no one wanted to hear. But Tina did not come for them. She came for Amina, the village that forgot. The marketplace was emptier than she remembered. The once vibrant stalls were now quiet. The traders speaking in hushed voices, glancing around as if afraid something unseen was listening. The few people who remained hurried about their business, refusing to meet her eyes. She made her way to Maya's hut, the childhood friend of Amina, the only one who might still hold a piece of the past. Maya's face was pale when she saw Tina standing at her doorstep. "Why have you returned?" she whispered, glancing nervously over her shoulder. Tina's gaze was steady. "You know why." Maya hesitated. Then, with a heavy sigh, she stepped aside. "Come in." "But we must not speak loudly. The walls have ears." Inside, the air was thick with the scent of burning herbs. A small clay lamp flickered, casting long shadows against the mud walls. "Amina never left the village, did she?" Tina asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Maya's fingers trembled as she gripped the edge of her wrapper. She opened her mouth to speak, but at that moment, thump, thump, a loud knock at the door. Maya jumped, her eyes wide with terror. "You have to go," she hissed. "Who is it?" Tina demanded. Maya shook her head, pressing her finger to her lips. The knocking came again, louder this time. "Leave now," Maya whispered urgently. "Go to the river. Find the old woman who tells stories to the night. Tina hesitated for only a second before slipping out the back. The cold air bit at her skin as she disappeared into the night. Behind her, the knocking turned into pounding. And then, silence. The forbidden shrine. The path to the river was overgrown, as if nature itself had tried to bury something. The shrine was near. She could feel it in her bones, in the way the air grew heavier with every step. She heard them before she saw them. The whispers, low, murmuring voices slithered through the trees like a snake, wrapping around her like an invisible mist. "Tina, why have you come back?" She froze. The voice was neither harsh nor welcoming. It was sad. She turned a corner, and there it was, the sealed shrine. The wooden doors were covered in strange carvings, twisted like gnarled fingers. A thick rope of cowries and dried leaves had been tied across it, a warning for any who dared approach. But Tina was not afraid. She stepped forward, tracing her fingers over the carvings. Something about them felt wrong. Not sacred, but desperate. As if someone had sealed the shrine not to protect the village, but to hide something inside. Then she saw it. Half buried in the earth near the entrance was a small ivory bracelet, smooth and familiar. Amina's bracelet. Tina's heart pounded as she reached for it. But as soon as her fingers closed around the cold ivory, a hand grabbed her wrist. She gasped, yanking away, stumbling back. A dark figure loomed before her, his breath hot and angry. Max. His eyes were like two black holes, swallowing every trace of light. His voice was calm, but beneath it lurked something sharp, something dangerous. "You have been warned before, child." His fingers clenched around a carved staff. "Some things are meant to remain buried. You meddle in matters beyond you." Tina's grip on the bracelet tightened. "The dead do not stay buried, Chief. Their voices are rising. Can't you hear them?" For the first time, fear flickered in his eyes. Then, in the blink of an eye, his face hardened once more. He took a step closer, his presence casting a shadow over her. "You should leave, Tina, before the river takes another soul." And then, he was gone, vanishing into the night like a ghost. Tina stood there, her breath unsteady, the bracelet burning cold in her palm. The river whispered. The truth was waiting, and she was running out of time. The night was thick with silence. Not even the crickets dared to sing. A heavy mist crawled from the river, slithering between the trees like unseen fingers searching for something. Or someone. Tina clutched her raffia bag of charms and whispered a quiet prayer to her ancestors. Her heartbeat thumped like a talking drum against her ribs. The truth she had come searching for was close, too close. She stood before the sealed shrine near the river's edge, its ancient doors covered in dried palm fronds, the traditional warning of forbidden ground. The villagers feared this place. It was said that anyone who dared disturb it would wake something that should never be woken. But Tina was not just anyone. She pulled a small, black stone from her bag, a charm given to her by Mamma Mia, the old storyteller. "When the spirits block your way," the old woman had said, "this will make them listen." Tina pressed the stone to the wooden doors and whispered, "Amina, I have come to hear your truth." A sudden gust of wind howled through the trees. The mist thickened, twisting into the shape of a woman with long flowing hair. The air turned cold, bone-deep, spirit-cold. The shrine doors creaked open on their own. Tina stepped inside. The air was thick with the scent of wet earth and something old, something rotting. The faint glow of moonlight spilled through the cracks in the shrine's wooden roof, casting long, ghostly shadows. And then she saw it. A stone altar stood at the center of the room, covered in dark stains. Shackled to it, bound by rusted chains, lay the skeletal remains of a young woman. "Amina," Tina gasped, a sharp pain tearing through her chest. The truth had been here all along, buried beneath the lies of the village. A single ivory bracelet still clung to one of the bony wrists, the same one Amina had worn on the night of her disappearance. Tina reached out, her fingers trembling as they brushed against the cold bone. The moment she touched it, the room shifted. The air grew thick, heavy, suffocating. The shadows twisted, stretching unnaturally. And then, a whisper. "The river did not take me." The voice was soft but full of sorrow, curling into the corners of the room like smoke. Tina's breath caught in her throat. "Amina?" she whispered, and then the skeleton moved. The chains rattled as a shape began to form, rising from the altar. Amina's spirit, dark and sorrowful, took shape before Tina's eyes. Her skin was translucent, her long hair flowing as though caught in an invisible current. Tears streaked down her pale, ghostly face. She was not angry. She was not vengeful. She was broken. "They gave me to the darkness," Amina whispered. "Max?" A sudden crash outside made Tina whirl around. Footsteps, voices. The villagers were coming, and they were not coming to listen. Outside, torches lit up the night, their flames flickering like wild eyes in the darkness. Max stood at the front, his face hard as stone, his eyes gleaming with something dangerous. Behind him, a group of villagers clutched sticks and machetes, their faces twisted with fear. "You should have stayed away, Tina," Max said, his voice like iron. "Some truths should remain buried." Tina stepped forward, her voice steady. "The truth is already awake," Amina speaks. The villagers shifted uneasily, glancing at one another. Whispers rippled through them like leaves in the wind. But Max was not afraid. He lifted a hand and the villagers fell silent. "Enough of this foolishness," he barked. "She was taken by the river goddess. That is what we were told. That is what we believe." The wind howled suddenly, knocking torches from hands. The flames flickered and died instantly. The night turned unnaturally dark. Then a new voice spoke. "The river did not take me." The villagers froze. The air thickened, pressing against their chests. Then Amina's spirit emerged from the shrine, her translucent form gliding over the ground. Cries of terror filled the air. Villagers fell to their knees, wailing, their faces twisted with guilt. Max staggered back, his breath ragged. "No, this is a trick." Amina's ghostly eyes locked onto him. "You gave me away," she whispered. "You traded my life for your wealth." The villagers gasped, horror dawning on their faces. The truth was no longer a whisper in the dark. It was standing before them, undeniable and unshakable. Max tried to run, but the river had been waiting. A sudden wave of water surged from the shrine, twisting like a serpent. It wrapped around Max's legs, dragging him to the ground. He screamed, clawing at the mud. "Mercy!" he shrieked. "Please!" But Amina's spirit only wept. The water swallowed him whole, dragging him toward the river's edge. His screams cut through the night, but the villagers did not move. They watched in silence, their faces pale with realization. And then he was gone. The river was still once more. The villagers stood in stunned silence. Their silence had killed Amina. Their silence had protected a monster. Tina wiped a tear from her cheek. She had done what she came to do, but the weight of it settled on her shoulders. As the first light of dawn crept over the village, she turned to leave. She did not look back. But as she stepped onto the road leading away from Lala, she heard it one last time. A whisper. "Thank you." And then only the wind remained. The dead do not sleep when the living carry their sins. Thank you so much for watching this intense and gripping story on African Tales Stories channel. Your support means everything to us. If you enjoyed it, please give it a thumbs up and share your thoughts in the comment section, and we'd love to know where you're watching from. Drop your location in the comment section below. Don't forget to share this story so that more people can watch and learn. Until next time, stay tuned for more captivating African Tales stories. Bye.